Imagine this. A woman sits across from Freud in his dimly lit Vienna office, her gloved hands clenched in her lap. She speaks of dreams, vivid, pulsing with symbols he can't ignore. But when she describes her desires, Freud hesitates. He scribbles a note, then crosses it out. Later, he locks those pages away, declaring them too dangerous for publication. What did she confess that unsettled the father of psychoanalysis so deeply? Here's the paradox. Freud built his legacy on excavating the unconscious, yet he buried her truth. Why? Because female desire, in its raw, unfiltered form, threatened the very foundations of his theories and the society they mirrored. It wasn't just about sex. It was about power. A woman's longing, untamed and unapologetic, dismantled the myth of her passivity. And that was a revelation no one was ready to face. Think of the implications. What if the map to her mind was never lost, just censored? What if, for over a century, we've been handed a fractured psychology, one that pathologizes her hunger instead of decoding it? The tension here is existential. If desire is the compass of the self, what happens when half the population's compass is deliberately misdrawn? Consider the questions that linger like smoke in the air. Why does culture still flinch at the idea of women wanting, truly wanting, on their own terms? Why is her desire so often framed as reaction, not revolution? And what would happen if we dared to follow Freud's banned notes into the labyrinth of her psyche? The answer waits, coiled in the shadows of history. But to uncover it, we must first confront the silence and the fear that buried it. The silence around female desire isn't accidental, it's engineered. Freud's suppression was just one stitch in a much larger tapestry of control, woven by forces both psychological and societal. To understand why, we must descend into the darker corridors of human history, where power and fear intersect. Consider Nietzsche's warning. Every philosophy conceals another philosophy. Every opinion is also a hiding place. Freud's theories, too, were a hiding place, not just for repressed libido, but for a deeper, more unsettling truth. Female desire, when fully acknowledged, disrupts the hierarchy of attention. It shifts the axis of power. And power, as Foucault revealed, never surrenders without resistance. Jung saw the archetypal feminine as both creator and destroyer, the anima that could elevate or unravel the masculine ego. No wonder, then, that cultures built on patriarchal structures would reflexively mute her longing. It wasn't just about sex. It was about sovereignty. A woman who knows what she wants is no longer a mirror for male desire. She becomes a force of her own. And that terrifies the systems designed to keep her in check. But the repression goes deeper than politics. Schopenhauer, in his bleak brilliance, argued that desire itself is the root of suffering. Yet he framed it as a universal human flaw, not a gendered one. Why, then, was female desire singled out as especially dangerous? Because it defied the narrative of female fulfillment as passive, receptive, secondary. To admit that women hunger, not just for love, but for conquest, creation, even chaos, would unravel centuries of myth-making. The psychological cost of this erasure is staggering. Women have been handed a script that pathologizes their hunger. Hysteria, attachment, over-emotion. But peel back the labels, and you find the same primal drive that's celebrated in men, just twisted into something shameful. The question isn't just why this happened. It's how we've all been complicit in believing it. The forbidden pages of Freud's work were not just lost, they were weaponized by omission. Like a phantom limb, the absence of true female desire in our cultural consciousness has left women grasping for something they cannot name, while society gaslights them into believing it was never there to begin with. Consider the neurological paradox. MRI studies reveal that women's brains light up with more complexity in regions linked to desire than men's. Yet their lived experience is often one of muted longing, of desires filtered through layers of should rather than want. This is no accident. It's the result of what Sartre called bad faith, the act of lying to oneself to fit into a system that demands your denial. Women have been conditioned to perform desire rather than inhabit it, to be the object of craving rather than the author of it. The fallout is everywhere, camouflaged as normalcy. The orgasm gap, not just in bedrooms, but in boardrooms, where ambition is still punished as unfeminine aggression. The Madonna-whore dichotomy, a cognitive trap that forces women into boxes of purity or depravity, with no space for integrated desire. The burnout epidemic, where women exhaust themselves meeting external expectations, their own unmet yearnings metastasizing into fatigue or rage. Culturally, we've pathologized the symptoms while ignoring the root. Why are women so anxious? Because they're starved of the right to want without apology. Why do they people please? Because their desires were never given a language, only a leash. But here's the cruelest twist. This system doesn't just harm women, it impoverishes human connection. When half the population's desire is distorted or silenced, everyone is left chasing shadows, men included. The very thing Freud feared, the destabilizing power of female desire, is the very thing that could have liberated us all. The reckoning is overdue. The question is, who dares to pick up the band map and read it aloud? The moment you realize female desire was never missing, just forbiddens, is the moment the old world cracks open. This isn't about empowerment cliches or performative liberation. It's about something far more radical, the reclamation of wanting. History's greatest rebellions began with a single defiant act of imagination. The suffragettes didn't ask for permission. They burned the rule book. Simone de Beauvoir didn't describe womanhood, she redefined it. And now, the same fire awaits in the shadows of every suppressed longing. But how? Decode the cultural hypnosis. Your desires were never broken, they were redirected. Like a river forced underground, they've resurfaced as anxiety, people-pleasing, or unexplained rage. The first rebellion is to trace these emotions back to their source. What do I actually want when no one is watching? Embrace the forbidden's vocabulary. Language creates reality. Start naming your hunger without euphemisms. Not, I'd like, but I demand. Not maybe someday, but this is non-negotiable. Freud feared this lexicon because words, once spoken, become irreversible. Practice the art of unreasonable joy. Society pathologizes women who take up space with their pleasure. Do it anyway. Dance alone to music that thrills you. Ask for the raise. Have the sex you want, not the sex you're expected to perform. Every act of unapologetic wanting is a strike against the old regime. Rewrite the archetypes. Jung warned that those who don't confront their shadows become puppets to them. Reject the binary of saint or seductress. You contain multitudes, the tenderness and the ruthlessness, the grace and the greed. Integration is the revolution. This isn't self-help, it's soul reclamation. The moment you stop negotiating your desires is the moment you become ungovernable. Here's the secret buried in Freud's censored notes. Female desire isn't just a force, it's the master key to reality itself. Freud didn't suppress his findings because women's longing was trivial. He buried them because they revealed an existential truth. When a woman fully inhabits her wanting, she doesn't just change her life, she rewrites the rules of the game. The forbidden insight: every oppressive system relies on one lie. You are not the author of your own story, but desire is authorship in its purest form. It's the compass pointing toward your unlived life. What terrified Freud, and still terrifies the systems he represents, is that female desire, when unleashed, exposes the flimsy architecture of these constructs. The myth of male centrality. What if women's pleasure doesn't orbit around men? The illusion of scarcity. What if women stop competing for crumbs and bake their own damn cake? The grand illusion of control. What if the hysterical woman, was just the first draft of a prophet. The alchemical shift. Your deepest cravings aren't distractions. They're divine Morse code. Every time you silence a want, you erase a future. But when you follow the breadcrumbs of your hunger, that's when the magic starts. Desire becomes discernment. You stop tolerating what doesn't serve you. Longing becomes leadership. Your unmet needs transform into boundaries. Pleasure becomes power. Orgasms, creative, financial, spiritual, become acts of rebellion. The final revelation. Freud's real fear wasn't female sexuality. It was female sovereignty. A woman who knows what she wants is architect of realities, sculptor of destinies. She doesn't need to smash the system. She builds new ones in the spaces between her ribs. So here's your invitation. Stop asking for permission to want. Start treating your desires like sacred texts. The world will try to gaslight you. You're too much, too hungry, too ambitious. But that's just the sound of old gods crumbling. The truth was never lost. It was waiting. Now, what will you do with it? The most dangerous truth Freud uncovered, and the one he couldn't bring himself to publish, was this: female desire is not a biological function. It is a metaphysical revolt. For centuries, we've been handed a lie wrapped in scientific jargon that women's wanting is derivative, reactive, a satellite orbiting the sun of male sexuality. But the unpublished case studies tell a different story, one where women's dreams and yearnings revealed a terrifying to the patriarchy truth. The female psyche doesn't just experience desire, it architects reality through it. The forbidden epiphany. When Freud's female patients spoke in his office, they weren't just confessing forbidden fantasies. They were unwittingly mapping the subconscious infrastructure of power itself. Their erotic dreams contained symbols of creation and destruction that mirrored ancient goddess myths. Their hysterical symptoms disappeared when allowed to pursue creative work. Their suppressed anger transformed into visionary clarity when channeled. This wasn't pathology. It was the suppressed feminine principle reasserting itself, what Jung later called the return of the anima, but with teeth. The alchemy of wanting. What the Vienna establishment feared wasn't sexual liberation. It was the realization that a woman fully in touch with her desire becomes a divining rod for truth. She can no longer be gaslit, a vortex of manifestation. Her focused longing reshapes reality, a living critique of systems. Her unmet needs expose civilization's flaws. This explains why every repressive regime first targets women's autonomy, not because they're weak, but because their liberation unravels the entire construct. The final initiation. The journey doesn't end with claiming your desires. It begins when you realize your hunger was never the problem, it was the path. Those censored Freudian pages, they held the key to what scares power structures most. A woman who stops apologizing for her appetite doesn't just change her life, she changes what's possible for all of humanity. Now the choice is yours. Will you keep trying to fit your wildfire into society's candle holders? Or will you let it burn down everything that was built to contain you?